Another quarterback that's getting ready for the NFL draft is Mason Fine. Mason Fine, you may not know that name, but Mason Fine is a record-setting quarterback from North Texas who apparently the Saints have had conversations with Mason Fine, and Mason Fine is working out with a crew of people this offseason, including Todd Durkin, who is the trainer who trains Drew Brees. If you're watching, there's a video, Mason Fine working out with Todd Durkin, and behind him is Drew Brees. They're literally standing right next to each other doing the same exercises, working out with Durkin. Fine set all kinds of records at North Texas. He threw for 12,000 yards in his career, 93 touchdown passes in just 39 games. He set the North Texas passing record as junior, won back-to-back CUSA Offensive Player of the Year awards. I mean, this guy was a stud. He was a North Texas record-setting stud quarterback. And he was not invited to the scouting combine. Most likely because he's 5'10". One of those things where a measurable likely costs a guy like Mason Fine draft position. Tom Pelissero tweeted, North Texas quarterback Mason Fine had video interviews last week with several teams, including the Saints. He says before the lockdown, Fine was working out with trader Todd Durkin and Drew Brees. How would you feel about the Saints taking a flyer on a guy like this late in the draft? For me, I'd love it. I think this is the perfect option late in the draft. And sometimes we get confused because we assume like Drew Brees was this down and out, little engine that could type guy. Drew Brees was the 32nd pick in the draft. Now, that was when there were 31 teams, so he was the first pick of round 2, but it's not like Drew Brees was this cast aside. Lamar Jackson was the 32nd pick in the draft. People thought highly of Drew Brees when he was drafted. It's not like Tom Brady, who was taken 199th overall in round 6. That, of course, is always going to be the benchmark. Then you can look at other guys who were taken like in round 3. Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was the 75th overall pick in the draft. Round 3. Joe Montana was a third-round pick, 82nd overall. So even though those guys weren't top 10 guys or whatever the case, first-round picks, they weren't Brady in round 6 or an undrafted free agent. They weren't a little engine that could. They at least had an investment in them. Mason Fine is very likely going to be a late round, round 6 or 7 guy or an undrafted free agent. And I think that is perfect for what the New Orleans Saints are trying to accomplish. We talked about this at length. You got to replace Teddy Bridgewater, and it's pretty clear that the Saints are not committing right now to Taysom Hill being their number 2 quarterback. Regardless of what Sean Payton says about Taysom Hill's future and his opportunity to be a starter, and maybe they'll give him the chance to win that job. But actions speak louder than words, and the fact that last year you signed Teddy Bridgewater to a $7 million one-year contract to be your backup quarterback tells you what you need to know, that they see more value in keeping Taysom Hill in that slash role, which is where obviously they want to keep him again this year, so you have to have another option at quarterback. So is it a veteran or is it a rookie? And I think if you have the opportunity to bring in a veteran free agent on a non-guaranteed contract and a rookie and say, go compete. This is a very minimal investment into a guy that might very well end up being a huge hit for you and could end up being your number 2 quarterback. Now, it is worth noting that Drew Brees, generally speaking, likes to have a veteran backup quarterback. All those years where he had Mark Brunell there, where he had Josh McCown, he wanted a veteran backup quarterback because he wanted, or Luke McCown, because he wanted, which one was it? Was it Luke or Josh? Hell, I'm confusing myself now. Because Drew always liked to have a veteran guy that he could have on the bench, that he could bounce things off of when he came to the sideline. The one exception in his career was Chase Daniel, when Chase Daniel was his backup. And maybe this is one of those instances where you draft a guy like Mason Fine, he fits the mold of what you are and what you've been as a franchise. He can sit there and learn behind Drew Brees, and maybe he wins the backup job. Or maybe you draft him, sign him as an undrafted free agent, you bring him to camp, it doesn't work out, you cut him, maybe you sign him to the practice squad, see if you can stash him for a year, and then let him compete next year to be your starting quarterback. This is probably a guy you can stash on a practice squad somewhere, too, if you needed another guy this year as an option. So I like the idea. If the Saints love a quarterback at 24, if Jordan, no pun intended, but if Jordan Love's on the board at 24 and they love him and they want to pull the trigger, cool. If through their evaluation they like that guy that much and he's on the board, cool. If they love Jacob Eason or whoever it may be, if they just think that's the guy that can be the franchise to replace Drew Brees and they want to use a pick on it, cool. But if not, and they want to take a flyer on a guy late in the draft, I'd love to take a guy like this who draws rave reviews, who's set all kind of records, who fits this style of offense, who's 5'10", maybe plays with a chip on his shoulder. See what you got, bro.